Hello, CSL. Welcome back. Today, we're not talking about the playoff series or the playoff rounds. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get hold of Miles. Miles, I'm looking at you to talk about the second round. But today, we're here to talk about something a little bit different today. So I am joined by Willie again from the Orlando Magic. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Orlando Magic, purely Orlando Magic, nothing else about the season, about the twists and turns, and about what the outlook is sort of going into the off season. Willie, how's everything going over there? Nice chilled break now that the postseason's in. Ready to plan your attack for the off season?
Yeah, still going over some of the ideas and plans in my mind, trying to figure out which way to go.
Yeah, it's certainly
Thanks
been
for having me too.
no problem. It's certainly been an interesting season for the Orlando Magic. Probably one of the fun storylines of the CSL this year, really, in terms of how things have changed and how the outlook of the team has changed. But before we start talking about the off season and some of the trades which are well documented now, just cast your mind back to the beginning of the season and looking at the team, the makeup with Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins and Covington, and the one man talent that is Paul George. What were you sort of thinking going into the season? What was your expectations of that team? We've got an article up about it, but it'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, hell, my thoughts were to compete for a title. That's where I felt we were at. Obviously, we came up short, and obviously changes were made. But yeah, at that particular time, I feel like we had a great shot to come out of the East, minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty, I think pretty much there was a consensus that when we looked at the East at the beginning of the season, we had the likes of obviously Toronto, Detroit, Cleveland, and the other team sitting alongside there was the Orlando Magic. Just the great talent is Paul George, led with DeMarcus Cousins, who some have mixed opinions about, but he was very up and down. Did you think the makeup of Paul George and Cousins as the two stars was enough to take this team to the next level?
I did. I thought that was the best duo in the entire league. Not even being biased about it, I just thought that.
And what sort of made you think that they were the best two? Was it the balance of the two together? Was it just that they were just two excellent players? Do you think they blended well, or was it just that star talent?
Well, it was just the makeup of the two together, like the inside out. And I feel like I was just completely a beast, unstoppable, and in the right situation. And I tried to put them in the right situation to be successful together, like the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think when a lot of teams look at roster construction, there's sort of there is a general consensus that the traditional in and out lineup works really well in DDS, and I mean, off the previous season, obviously you did well in there, but so you thought that the makeup was right, that they were going to sort of carry on taking you to that next level?
Well, the toughest thing, excuse me, was that I strictly was running isolation because I had tried other types of offensive sets, and Paul George wouldn't be successful in certain sets, and Cousins would, or vice versa. Cousins would be not quite as successful as Paul George would, and Paul George, that's the guy that's going to be the main player to lead to. So that I had chosen, here's fit in between those guys.
Willie, I think you're breaking up a little bit there, but I think you managed to catch that. Basically, you were trying to play an ISO offense with Paul George, and the balance of Cousins and George, the ISO offense sense like it
Ironically,
seemed to work fairly well. Was that the plan? Was it
get
to
a
run
PM from
an ISO offense and to
yeah, we
carry on that style of play going into this season?
way to maximize because he was going to be the one so I could maximize both of them together. And so I had to reach out and try and get the pieces to fit in between those guys for that particular offense. And which I was saying earlier, ironically, I just spoke to Flaming Homer. He had PM'd me. All season long, I was chasing Doug McDermott.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like his scoring rating wouldn't be so high to where he would take too many shots away from either one of those guys, Paul George and Cousins. And I felt like teams couldn't zone me because that was one of the main things they would do. They would zone me to stop Paul George. And so they would put all of the most of the work on Cousins to be there. If I can get McDermott, who spread the offense enough, along with Covington playing at the 4 position, to actually make a championship run, man.
Yeah, so I guess the thought there was
I felt like we had performed.
yeah, so I guess the thought there was to run the ISO offense so that Cousins and George got most of the scoring load. But there was a couple of gaps in that. Obviously, if you're running an ISO offense, they've got to be the primary scorers, and that you need guys who can fit around and spread the floor. So I guess that sort of is where Robert Covington came into this. Do you think that Robert Covington was probably an underrated piece going into the season, and in terms of the makeup and balance as you tried to push for a title?
And underrated, yeah, definitely. He showed his value earlier in the season with Paul George and Cousins, but once you fast forward when they were moved on, he really showed his value. And I have no clue when I saw his ratings, but man, he was pretty damn impressive, man, honestly. Very impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, obviously going into the season, we just touched on a few things there. I think, I've brought up Brett's article where he just did an overview of where he felt positions would be, how many wins teams would have. And I think the general consensus was that the Magic in was a weak Southeast division would have the edge, would get home court advantage, and anything's possible in the playoffs. But it didn't quite pan out like that, did it, Willie? I mean, it kind of took a sideways turn. And obviously, we'll talk about what you did to try and resurrect the Magic in a minute with some trades. But at what point did you think, from going from thinking that this team's title-winning, championship material, to I need to rethink about the roster construction?
Well, again, I feel like Doug McDermott, I thought he would have been very instrumental if we could the top 10 article pulled up. I was realistically looking at the situation. I saw that Paul George and Cousins were in the top 10 in several categories, but yet my record was pretty damn bad. It wasn't where I thought it was, or it should have been rather. It wasn't bad in comparison to where we're at now, but it was not where I thought we would be. So seeing that, I started looking at Paul George's age, and I was like, damn, I've had this guy for a long time. This is my favorite player, like in real life and definitely in the CSL. I'm like, shit, I can't build a winner. I can't get the pieces because, none of the trades were working out. So I couldn't get the pieces to make it happen. And I've always been approached every season about him and always turned every single offer down. Some of them were pretty horrible, laughable, and some of them were very good. Some of them were great, but I mean, that's just my guy. And I decided to not go with it. But as the season started going on this past season, then start being realistic about like, well, saying, okay, he's 31. Next year he will not have the same value. And as you can kind of see now, his numbers definitely decreased when he went to Dallas. They have more of a team, like higher quality players, but it's still something that's missing in their roster, and he's not being maximized, or he's unable to maximize his full talent because of the players that they have. I still feel like they have a championship team, but again, so end up trading him. I mean, he's 31. He's gonna be 32 next year, and his value would decrease. Man, it's plain and simple.
Yeah, so you sort of mentioned that George and Cousins were putting up excellent numbers, but perhaps the balance wasn't right, or it just wasn't translating into wins. And you kind of
Exactly.
touched on it, but you pulled what was probably one of the bigger blockbusters of the season, and
Hmm.
sort of a four-way deal here with Golden State, Charlotte, and Dallas, and kind of just blew the hinges off of the Magic team and the construction, and traded away, you're arguably one of the top two players in the league in Paul George, and acquired Andrew Wiggins.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like he's number one. I don't feel like it's too much of a debate. I feel like he's better than AD. Honestly, that's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's no question that he is one of the top players. I mean, it's probably down to personal preference in terms of him, or my mind, Anthony Davis is probably up
Yeah,
there with him. Just at that point, you get to that sort of talent of player in CSL, and it just comes down to real minute things and style and things like that. But obviously,
yeah.
you
That's,
pulled
that's
this.
pretty much the guy that people are going with, though. Every time like it's brought up, they're always bringing him up
Yeah.
as a number one.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so you pulled this trade off, and we won't go into the ins and outs of the trade because we discussed that on other casts ages ago. But in terms of getting Wiggins and Embiid back, what was the plan there? Was it just simply to get younger, or was it to acquire a little bit of talent, or just to try and deal your star at a peak when there's value? What sort of made you make this trade to begin with?
What made me go down the path to actually move him was the fact that I saw Atlanta when they got Cat. Once they picked him up, that's when I said to myself, you know what? I need to make a move and get just a little bit younger because realistically, I felt Cousins is still the top center in the league, but also realistically, he's 30. So it's I feel like Cat, if he keeps improving and making
Mm.
progress, then obviously DeMarcus is going to get older. So we may have just a 2 year window at best as having like the best top center in the league. So once Atlanta got Cat, that's when I definitely move forward, put my thinking, and say, you know, I need to get rid of Paul. I need to trade him to a team where he could win a title. And so
Yeah,
luckily, I was able to bring in Embiid and Andrew Wiggins. I feel like they're a great duo, and they're both 24, 23 years old currently.
yeah, and certainly this trade just stood out as a dealing away a star for youth, trying to extend the lifeline of the Magic, and trying to rebuild through that method. But so you sort of completed this trade, and then forgive me if this is the wrong set of timings, but then you obviously traded Cousins away. You mentioned he was 30 and starting to get towards that prime and later part of his career for Andre Drummond.
Mm-hmm.
Having acquired Embiid already, what sort of made you make this second move?
Second, is I feel into Drummond.
I think
And
I think you broke up on us there, so
yeah, can you
may
hear me
have
now?
to revisit the start of this one.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. All right, let me go back to that. I felt like it was just an opportunity. I saw Drummond was injured, and I feel like we had a great opportunity to get one of the top younger centers in the league. He actually was the top center initially before being hurt. That was pretty much the consensus. And so I feel like, okay, let me go ahead and make a move to get him. So I decided to bring him in. I decided to bring him in since Toronto was in a situation where they were actually going to probably move him since he was expiring at the end of the season. So decided to make that move with Toronto, make the trade, and bring him in.
Yeah, interesting. So it was more of a whilst the Dallas multi-deal move was purely for getting youth and assets back for Paul George. Sounds like this one was more of a just an opportunity that you just saw and just decided to try and take advantage to, accept the fact that this season might be a bit rough. But if providing you could bring Drummond back with his bird rights to basically upgrade at that position, is that fair to say there?
That's the idea. I want to go on with the twin tower setup. You know, either have one or the other between Embiid and Drummond slide to the power forward spot. But again, that's so far away still. Like Drummond is going to be out until the All Star break next season, so I try not to think about it. But that's the thought process to max him and bring him back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously some big moves there, really, some big decisions for the franchise to kind of make, really, going from thinking could contend for that title with Paul George and Cousins to basically reinvigorating with a bit of youth and arguably an upgrade to Drummond for Cousins, taking that sort of hit for the injury and slight gamble on the expiring contract there. He made another minor move, which was to bring in Tyler Ennis. Was that another opportunity that you saw, or was it some further thinking behind this one as well?
No, I like him. I think he's a really good point guard, man. I like him. I looked at his stats, his ratings. I
So
think he's a really good point guard.
do you see him as the future point guard of the franchise?
Yes, yeah, I see him as that because I feel like he plays really well off the ball. I feel like having Wiggins and having Embiid like doing most of the scoring and having maybe make some tweaks here and there at another position. But yeah, I feel like he's a great point guard to have play off of them. He's put up a few 20+ point games with us, shot well from behind the three and put up some nice assist numbers too a few times. Since I moved him to the starting lineup, since we ended up waiving Rondo.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned obviously bringing Ennis in, and again a younger guard prospect, and you made what was probably a controversial decision to waive Rondo. I don't think I've ever seen a general manager in a sim league essentially just cut the contract of a starting point guard.
Yeah,
On a quite a large salary, only 1 year, but what
yeah,
was the
yeah.
thinking behind that?
He was expiring, and I wanted to bring some realism to the league. And I'm sure in that situation, he wouldn't have been happy, like going from a possible contending team and a playoff team to not making the playoffs at all because we were on the verge of elimination. We tried to hold out until Wiggins came back, but we just couldn't keep pace with the rest of the East. So I waived him because I know for a fact I would not have. It would have been harder for me to start Ennis knowing that I still had Rondo in the team. I probably would have waited, still holding on to out hope that, oh man, maybe we can make the 8th seed. So I said, you know what, just let me go ahead and cut him and move him on, and hopefully somebody that really needs him can, will pick him up.
Yeah, yeah, and there was certainly a massive fight for his services. I know I put in a
Yeah,
bid.
which was ironic because during the season when I had him on the trade block, oh, he doesn't have any value, even though he's expiring. But as soon as I waived him, I saw all of the teams putting in bids for him, and I laughed.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, it was his salary that put me off. I couldn't get anywhere near that without throwing in one of
But
my main guys.
I don't understand he was expiring.
Hmm.
But yeah. Yeah, this is my
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I think for me personally, I think that Rondo thing opens up the question mark that the league should probably consider in the off season, whether it's right or wrong, whether we should do cut and trades for certain expiring players, certain ages, because I think you would have had a market then. Because I certainly would have been interested if I could get him on a minimum salary, giving up some sort of assets. It would have balanced it a lot better for some of the playoff teams, certainly.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, so obviously some interesting trades, some big decisions made, big change in direction. I've got our first sort of question from some of the general managers around the league who have thrown in some questions to me. Sort of, I said that this was going on, and the first one that sort of fits with this trade discussion is was sent in, which was basically that one of the guys were asking, obviously you made the decision to go young, change the roster structure, bring in Wiggins and Drummond and Embiid. The question sort of hanging that we've received was, why didn't you just keep Paul George? Bearing in mind he is older, but using guys like LeBron James as an example in the CSL, where they're in their mid-30s now and still performing at a good level. Keep Paul George, build around him again, restructure it. The comments that came in from this question were, for example, you had Brook Lopez in the offseason. If you'd have tied him up, you could have potentially shipped him off for some assets, shipped Cousins off. You may still have not done as well this year, but you'd have had your lottery pick. Or you could have, dealt that pick for Drummond in the end, and you could have had Paul George and Drummond potentially. What made you think of going down this route rather than just rebuilding and restructuring around Paul George?
Well, again, I mean, he was getting older, and the East, I saw this team's getting younger and still being competitive, and I saw us getting older and just being like maybe as good as the third team in the East, the third seed. Detroit and Toronto are usually the class of the East. So I didn't see us being able to surpass them with the roster that I had because I could not make the trades that I was trying to do. And I just didn't want to hold on to them any longer and watch this value decrease. So it was just time to move on from Paul George, which it hurt, but I ended up doing it to get younger. So I'm very happy with that. Had I kept him and gotten Andre Drummond, it still would have been the same thing to me. Like Drummond was out until next season, the upcoming season. So him being out to All-Star break, that wouldn't have done me any good. I still would be sitting on Paul George, and he may be putting up great numbers, even better than he had been ever, because we would have, not as good a talent around him. So I just felt like I didn't want to put him in that position. I didn't want to keep holding on to him year after year and, never making it back.
Yeah, so it's almost sounds like it's because obviously you mentioned you're a fan of him in real life and
Yeah,
you're a fan of him in this league, and it
absolutely.
almost sounds like you're sort of fighting off the balance of I really want to keep him, I really want to keep him because he's a great player, he's excellent in this league, but at the same
Yeah.
time I want to see him win a championship in this league. And it sounds like there's a bit of a battle between which way do you go. And it sounds like the latter one has won there, and you want to see him win that championship over everything else.
Yeah, whether it was with me or not, because I had him, and we just couldn't do it. I think probably my biggest error was moving Gorgie Jane because I knew for a fact it wouldn't have been quite as challenging because Cousins and Jane, they showed that they could play well together. So I already had an idea that, man, if I bring back Gorgie and have Paul George and Cousins, I feel like we would have been a much better team. But I just decided to move him and take a different approach, a different challenge, and it just didn't work out. So that was the thing that I really most thought about going into it. So that was the thought process. That's why I ended up deciding to move them.
Yeah, a really interesting insight into the battle, the in-house battle that goes on with general managers in sim leagues and in CSL, and that you have this balance between what you want to do and what direction you want to take, and you at the end of the day, this is a sim league, and you want to see certain players have who perform so well in the league to have that opportunity to win championship, and the battle that goes on between there is fascinating. So obviously the rest of the season kind of moved on. Went for it's a bit of a rest of the season was a bit of a rebuilding prospect. Obviously Wiggins was out, Drummond was out. You finished with a 30-52 record. Do you think that's probably a fair reflection on sort of that development time that happened from the trades to the end of the season?
I expect us to do slightly better. I expected us to kind of hold our ground and be at 9th or 10th at worst, but not too far out of the picture when Wiggins got back. And I thought we could have made a push when he got back and made it maybe up to even 7th or 6th. And it didn't work out. So, yeah, it was kind of disappointing. It was kind of disappointing, but moving forward, I feel like we have a great outlook. Really do.
Yeah, no, I mean, talking about that outlook and moving into the off season, obviously there's the big overhanging question of Drummond and getting him locked up to a new deal, making sure you can fend off other teams for that aspect. Looking at the draft, looking at free agency, what's the plan immediately for this off season for the Magic?
For us to decide in the war room, the Magic war room. But yeah, obviously it's to bring back Drummond and from day one sign him to a max deal, and then see where we can go from there. Or even during that time period, we'll have the MLE available. So I'll do some scouring the free agent market to see who we can bring in that would fit into the type of team that we have, or the type of team I would like to have. I'm not necessarily looking for somebody like most GMs do. Let me just sign this guy so I can use him as trade bait later. I'm not looking to do that. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
genuinely looking to bring in somebody to play on the team to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, is it a particular need you're after at the moment, do you think, or is it just looking for some talent and be it any position, any style?
I really love Marquise Chris, man. I'm really high
Mm-hmm.
on him. That said, I do feel like probably our power forward position should be or could be addressed a little bit better, just out of fit, the
Mm-hmm.
necessity of fit. I feel like, yeah, we could bring in a, maybe a different type of power forward, or
Yeah,
maybe even small forward, and move Covington over to the power forward position because he played really well at both positions.
yeah. Do you kind of see that MLE sort of being a one season prospect? Because obviously, if Drummond comes back, you'll have Drummond and Embiid who probably occupy those front court positions.
Yeah, I mean, I just want somebody so we can hold our head above water because I want to get back to the playoffs. Because this sucks sitting back watching guys compete right now. To be
Yeah,
truthful, it
yeah,
really
yeah.
does.
No,
But yeah,
I do feel you there. It's a long wait between the end of the season and the draft. It feels like it's forever if you're not in the playoffs. So been
yeah,
there before,
yes.
and it's a painful wait.
Oh my goodness, man! I got so spoiled when I had Paul George because I was always a lottery team until I got that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in the same position, not being in the postseason.
Yeah, so it kind of opens up a couple of questions that I've got from the GMs as well. Again, here in terms of the off-season plans and thinking about the future of the Magic. And first one we've
Okay.
got is just a question here. So we talked about obviously Ennis and feeling that he's going to be the starting point guard and he's going to develop really well in that role. The question we've got from one of the general managers is actually contrary to that answer really, and they sort of said, what are you going to do, Willie, to address the point guard issues on the Magic? Do you regret adding that Magic first to Drummond trade, especially with the draft being loaded with point guards this year? Do you think that was the right decision to move Ennis, or could you have potentially have gained a point guard in the draft if you'd have kept that lottery pick, and who may have come out better than Ennis?
Um, who's to say it would have still been a lottery pick because I would have had Cousins, so it may not have been the lottery. We may have been in the playoffs. So I look at it as Cousins and whoever Toronto or whoever has the pick now. I can't remember who has it offhand now, but the Toronto pick is number 10.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
Toronto still have it. I think Toronto
number
still have it. So,
so it's whoever they get at 10
hmm.
versus Drummond and Ennis. And if I had to do it all over again, yeah, I would do the same thing because I really like Drummond. I like Ennis moving forward.
Hmm.
I look at it like this: Ennis was the Raptors pick, so the first that I acquired in the trade. So I just basically
Yeah.
traded Raptors first, which ended up being 29th, I think, for Ennis. So that's a win.
Hmm.
So no,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
Yeah, and certainly from what we've seen from Ennis is that he's got some good shooting. He needs to probably develop some of his some of his style of play, because he does
Yeah,
have the numbers, the percentage numbers there to become really efficient. Just needs a bit of work probably that he hasn't had for a while.
yeah,
Be interested to see the dynamic between Ennis, Wiggins, Embiid, and Drummond if he comes back. But
yeah.
um,
I'm looking forward to it. So I don't feel like I would have missed out on a point guard. Excuse me,
okay,
in this class. I mean, yeah, I
yeah,
probably
yeah.
obviously I would have, but I'm satisfied. I'm happy with what I have.
Yeah, and I guess if you're looking for the playoffs, it's the gamble on a rookie point guard can be hit and miss,
Yeah,
which we've seen
absolutely.
before. So the next question we've got, sort of speaking again to sort of the off season, and um, assuming you lock up Drummond with these bird rights, taking Drummond into the next season. Question from one of the general managers here is: with Andre Drummond being out for most of next season, do you still expect this team to make the playoffs? Do you think the balance is there, that there's enough talent there to get you over the line for when Drummond comes back?
Yes, yeah. I see us right now as being like a lower seed, obviously, because the East is improving. I see us as being a lower seed. I feel like we could push some of these guys to, to push them towards a six at at best. That's the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. And do you
But
think
again, I
with
have no idea what we're going to do off season. If we get the right type of player that I'm particularly trying to find style wise, I feel like then we'll be in a good position to compete again.
yeah, certainly the balance and the bench make up a huge amount in terms of getting that fit right. I know that from experience. It's about having the right types of guys that fit the system there. But in terms of Drummond, when he comes back, you sort of mentioned that you think you're going to be a lower seed with the current roster structure, providing everything goes okay in the off season. With
Yeah.
Drummond back, do you think that sort of propels you back into that top four, top three discussion?
I hope so. I'm not sure how it's going to actually look. It looks good on paper, but I don't know how it's going to turn
Hmm.
out. Rather, I mean, I think Drummond and Embiid they've pretty much balanced each other out. Like Drummond's defensive force, and Embiid can block shots and he can score, rebounds pretty well. Um, again, I'm not sure. That's the idea. That's the idea.
Yeah, there's not too many teams that have that kind of front court really. I can't think off the top of my head of another team that has that kind of balance. That is certainly unique to the Orlando Magic, and it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it
Um,
would definitely be a different direction for us, man. I'm so used to building around a wing player, so
yeah, yeah,
take this challenge.
yeah. And I guess you've still got Wiggins who can play the
Yeah.
wing positions and
Oh yeah,
get
absolutely.
give you
Wiggins,
some,
man.
give you some excellent numbers there as well. So I guess going forward, the final question we've had from the general managers here is, you know, two-part question really. What is your 3-year plan for this team, and how does that change in the long term with if injuries to Wiggins and Drummond actually cause a ratings decrease for them? Does that change your thinking?
I'll just have to wait and see. I like where they're at right now, personally, and I'll probably end up taking some notes from some other GMs, like seeing how they transform their offense and they run different offensive sets. So I can't just strictly play ISO ball. I don't even do that anymore with these guys now. I actually changed up to ball movement, and it's been working really well. So I'm seeing some really good things from them. So that's the idea going into next season in the off season, like keeping that style of offense and bringing in players who actually fit that that style of play. regardless of ratings drops by Wiggins or Drummond, if that
Yeah.
occurs.
Yeah. So I guess even with the ratings drop, you still feel that those two are enough to take this franchise forward and get them back up to being in that Eastern Conference discussion.
Yeah, I even think Embiid is, man. I feel like we got young talent to match any of the other teams. I really do. Like Miami, they've got their young guys. Atlanta, they have Cat. So, to keep pace with those guys, which of course was another reason why I ended up moving Paul George and Cousins, because those teams are young, especially Miami. They came the hell out of nowhere. I was like, what the hell? So yeah, I had to get some young guys to, compete with those guys, man. Or at least keep pace.
Yeah, yeah. And it's going to be fascinating, these, because like you said, there's a lot of young teams there and all vying for that supremacy once the Raptors and probably Cleveland sort of start to fall away as they age. So it's going to be a fascinating 3 years for the Eastern Conference in particular, and fascinating to see how the Magic do with that, with Wiggins and Drummond and Embiid and Ennis sort of running the ship for them. So
Covington too. Don't forget
Oh
about
yeah,
Covington. He's
Covington.
been
I always forget about Covington. He sort of flies under the radar for me, but I know you post post like a madman on the forum about him, and he certainly has done well this year as well. Are you surprised with his development, or is it kind of exactly what you expected?
It really wasn't not what I expected. Like just the numbers, seeing him in the offense, man, he shoots the ball a lot more than I thought he would, and he plays really well. I didn't think he would
Yeah.
shoot the ball, but he's just giving me numbers all across the board, like from points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, 3-pointers. Man, he's he's fantasy gold if this was in the fantasy league.
Yeah, he does put numbers up across the board. So it'd be interesting to see how maybe he makes that next step and tightens up his shooting percentages. And if you can get like that extra 1 or 2 points out of him, the extra rebounds and steal, and then he looks like a really, really good glue guy. So we'll see how he develops. So I just want to sort of finish up this episode really with just some general quick fire questions, really. Some of them may be about players, maybe about other aspects of basketball. Just first thing that comes into your head. No reason, no logic. Just first thing that comes into your head. So first one we've got here is Kemba Walker or Steph Curry?
Kemba.
James Harden or Russell Westbrook?
Harden.
Paul George or Andrew Wiggins?
Paul George. It was Paul George or Andrew Wiggins and Embiid. That's
okay, so it's Paul George, but if Andrew Wiggins and Embiid are in there, then it's both of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so offense or defense?
Ooh. Both. Man, it's hard to decide.
You got to pick one. You got to pick one.
Our team has got to be offense.
Offense, okay. So a top guard or a top center?
Top guard. But now I got to focus on top center.
Talented youth or talented veterans?
Depends on the type of team. So I have to say youth now, but prior to veterans. Yeah.
Okay. A layup or a dunk?
Dunk.
Okay. Fundamentals or Showtime?
That's another tough one. Showtime. It sells tickets.
Okay. And then finally, East or West?
East all day.
Great. Excellent. It's been great to have you on, Willie. Fascinating to find out about the Orlando Magic and the plans for the off season and what has been an up and down season, really. Good luck with the off season. Best of luck.
For having me on. Go Magic. All right. Peace, Coach Fury.
See you later.